All right, so we've got our first paragraph, our intro paragraph, and our last few sentences sort of set up for the conclusion, and they set up for the body, talking about these events have been to shape us who we are today, and have helped remind us that we must always use our heads in life. I guess we could make this a quote. But let's not. I think it's fine without using the word heads as a quoted word. Indeed, taking a few ready risks, so you know that one of these stories is going to be about a risk or fun, and then also planting a seed, ignominy, which is sort of embarrassing, something that's where we might have done something that might be negative, societally a negative. So we're sort of, the writer's sort of setting the stage, saying, "Look, I'm planting the seed here, so I want you to keep reading." And even in perhaps especially if. So we could have said especially if, but I decided to say even and perhaps especially if one is such a rarity as to be born an identical twin or triplet or quadruplet, etc. Okay, so let's do the first body paragraph. I think it's a good start. So, a vivid that I remember from childhood is when when Chris and I were playing soccer in our condominium. In Norwalk, California. At around, I think, 12 years old. You want to check when Chris and I were playing soccer? When Chris and me were playing soccer? No, that's the subjects. Chris and I. So you say Chris and I were playing soccer. So you want to take that phrase out, strip it down, and see if it makes sense. So Chris and I were playing soccer, or Chris and me were playing soccer? Chris and I were playing soccer. Okay, cool. At around 12 years old. We don't have to say 12 years old each, because we know we're both twins, so we're obviously going to be the same age. So you want to keep it taut. Okay. We placed our soccer ball in the middle of the condo. So now I changed from condominium to condo to truncate it. In the middle of the condo, and we both paced back to the opposing wall. We both paced back to the opposing walls. So that's sort of painting the picture of what we're moving. We're pacing back. We're like, okay, I'm going to walk 80 steps back to the one wall, and he's going to walk 80 steps to the opposite direction to the other wall, to the opposing. We both paced back to the opposing walls. Getting ready, each getting ready to try to take out the ball first and start playing one-on-one, right? So that's very clear. We're explaining that we're playing one-on-one, yada yada. Place back a few hundred, let's just do a few hundred steps to the opposing walls, each getting ready. So that paints the picture of it's far. It's not like 10 steps or 5 steps. It's a few hundred steps. We placed each getting ready to try to take out the ball first and start playing one-on-one. let's say each of us. I think each getting ready makes sense, but I think each of us is a little bit clearer. Each of us getting ready to try to take out the ball first and start playing one-on-one. Then we were off. Both ran our hardest to try to get to the ball first. Well, we already said the ball first, so let's say to try to get to the ball before the other one did. And it might not be too surprising to hear that we both slammed our heads against each other and fell to the ground. Before either of us was able to kick the ball away and get first possession. So we're using different phrasing, but saying the same thing. We're sort of going around the same thing, but you don't want to like repeat the same phrases, right? Get the ball, kick the ball, get to the ball. So it's like to try to take out the ball first, right? We're using soccer lingo. You take the ball out to try to get to the ball, right? And then to kick the ball away. Now we could use a different word other than ball, but it would kind of come off like we're trying too hard. We could say, you know, the round object, or the, you know, there are some words and some explanations or some parts of the narrative where you sort of have to repeat the same word, because by using any replacement word, it just doesn't sound good. It sounds like you're trying way too hard. It just doesn't flow right. So it's okay. If we were to do anything, it would be to omit one of the sections where we said to the ball. So to get to the ball before the other one did, but we also want to paint a clear picture. So I like this though. I think it works. I think it's functional. And not every sentence is going to be like, you know, award worthy. It's not going to be like the most creative or the most interesting or the most dynamic. Well, you want it to be dynamic, but you also know that some of these sentences are just going to be very functional. Just painting a clear picture and being specific is good enough, and grammatically correct is good enough. You know, and you also don't want to have, you know, too many sentences like this where the reader has to sort of push a little. It's pretty competent sentence, but you don't want to have too many of those, because then it comes off as a little bit, I want to say pretentious, but it's like you're trying too hard. You still want to tell a story, and you still want to hit the important points of what you're sharing. So we're talking about our heads. We both slammed our heads against each other and fell to the ground before each of us was able to kick the ball and get first possession. While we both were, you know, you could say obviously, we both were obviously quite stunned. We could say dazed. I don't want to say dazed and confused, because that's sort of a cliche, but you could say we both were obviously quite dazed and in pain at that moment, right? We're bringing them to an exact moment. Nevertheless, so while, nevertheless, while we both were obviously quite dazed and in pain at that moment, nevertheless, looking back on that incident now, we can call it an incident, we can call it an event. On that incident now, looking back on that incident now, and I feel a sense of levity. I feel a sense of levity, of humor, of laughter. I feel a sense of levity. Um, Perhaps we didn't clearly forgetting that we both shared an egg in the womb. And then here's where we talk about being a twin without stating. We're sharing more details around being a twin, but we're not keep repeating being twins, being twins, being twins. So you want to like be sort of creative in your phrase selections. So clearly forgetting that we both shared an egg in the womb and came out with very similar body structures, heights, um, uh, you know, eventual weights, etc. Clearly forgetting we both shared an egg in the womb, came out with very similar body structures, heights, eventual weights, etc. We blah blah blah. We could say we. So let me just say banging our heads banging our heads was a solid piece of evidence, a solid reminder. Banging our heads after running full speed. So let's recreate that picture in a different phrase, right? Banging our heads after running full speed toward one another for, let's just say hundreds. Well, I don't want to say a few hundred again. So you can say for hundreds of feet. For hundreds of feet was a solid reminder. Was a clear reminder, right? A stark reminder. I guess stark is usually sort of negative, but this is just a clear reminder that we were identical. We were identical twins, both sharing an egg in the womb. Both sharing an egg in the womb and coming out, right? Both sharing and both coming. We want it to be parallelism. We want our verbs to be parallel. Both sharing an egg in the womb and coming out with very similar body structures, heights, eventual weights, right? Because in the beginning, I said that we weighed different weights, but we're still pretty close. Both sharing and coming out with very similar body heights, eventual weights, etc. This was a this memory resonates even now. And then we want to go back to sort of our thesis, which has to do with us using our heads. As this memory resonates even now, as we both elected not to try to take the soccer ball out. Again, using that process, I guess. We both, I would instead of not, I would say never again. We both elected never again to try to take this up using that process. On the contrary, we would instead afterwards. So instead of using the word elect again, we can say decide. decide which one of us would take the ball out first, and the other one would take the ball out at halftime. Problem solved, and our heads eventually healed. So yeah, so problem solved and our heads eventually healed. We could make that a hyphen. There's sort of humor in hyphens as well at times. So we could say problem solved and our heads eventually healed. You can just erase the hyphen, or you can do the hyphen because it's kind of funny. Like problem solved and our heads eventually healed. You know, if you're wondering, it's kind of stating the obvious, but when you're telling a narrative story, it really fits. So yeah, I think this is a good first paragraph, and it really reminds us. It reminds the reader that we are identical twins without saying it repeatedly, and giving them a sort of sense of when this came, you know, when this you know, when we were reminded of this based on a specific event, or based on the outcome of a specific event or an incident. And then obviously I would reread this, and so we'll have time to proofread, but for right now I think this is a good first paragraph. Kind of funny. Obviously we're putting this together, but once we look at it from start to finish as a reader with fresh eyes, I think it's going the right pace, the right tone, and it's sort of bringing people into our world as like young identical twins. And we're not overwhelming the reader with like 90 different incidents or events. We want to strip it down. Remember in the beginning we had all these different questions and potential events, but we stripped it down, you know. So we stripped it down to slamming heads, taking tests, structure of plays, acting and lip syncs, and then the conclusion. So I think this is a good first body paragraph. Thank you very much.